All right, and welcome back to this week's edition of Conservative Arkansas Media. Last week was quite the spectacle. The governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, calling a special session, and it was not, smooth. I don't think anybody would say it was smooth. There was a lot on the agenda, but the big sticking point, of course, was whether or not there were going to be major reforms, is what some people are calling them, to the Freedom of Information Act. This, of course, now as a journalist myself, doing the journalistic work I do here at Conservative Arkansas Media, as well as the work I do elsewhere, I mean, anytime you're going to change the access that journalists can have or even citizens can have, I mean, the hair on the back of my neck is going to stand up, and I'm not going to be for that at all. So I, like many of you out there, I was not a fan once I read the legislation, the major changes that they were going to do. I wasn't a fan of it, but I was watching the special session unfold, and there was pushback. The state legislature, the House, some in the Senate, then the people at large that were testifying on both the left and the right did not want these sweeping changes, and instead they decided on the more reasonable approach to actually just make the changes that would protect the governor's security and her privacy when it comes to securing the safety of herself as well as her family. And so that's the legislation that ended up getting passed. And I've heard, I've been watching on the social media sites. I've, been reading a lot of Twitter. And the only thing about the changes to the FOI that did in fact pass in the special session that have given some people pause is something about what's the word retroactive that's in the piece of legislation. The word retroactive, that some of these changes are going to be retroactive when it comes to shielding, what we can see when the governor or her family are traveling abroad or whatever the state police are doing to protect her in her travels. So, because of that, I wanted to reach out to State Representative Jim Wooten, and he joins us now. State Representative Wooten, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much. Now, yes, sir. Now, the reason I wanted to talk to you today is because I understand that you have a history with the state police. Matter of fact, you used to work on security details for the governor. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience there?
Well, I was closely related to their work by being an administrative assistant in the director's office. I headed public information, so that meant closely with them on special executive assignments and that type of thing. I never served actually on the detail, but I did help and did work with them.
Okay.
For several years.
Well, thank you for clearing that up. Thank you for that clarification. But I've talked to you offline, and so I want you to kind of walk me through the special session, where it went, the FOIA, what it was, what you guys ended up passing, and tell us about this retroactivity, what it means, and more importantly, what it doesn't mean.
Okay. I think, first of all, let me say I agree with you. I'm a firm supporter of the OI. It's been there since 1967. It's proven itself. I happen to be blessed to have worked under it, one of the first public information officers with the state police. So I'm a firm believer in the right of the people to know. They have to know. They have to be informed. They have to be involved in what's happening in their government. The special session, in my estimation, as it unfolded, would have been better off not to have been called, because of the simple fact we wasted 2 days of taxpayers' money trying to figure out how we were going to deal with this FOI situation. It was too strong. It did not need to be approached in the manner that it was approached, submitted in the special bill. It was very clear, or should have been clear. It was clear to a lot of us that was not going to fly. But anyway, they went ahead and forced the bill, pushed it out there. It took us 2 days to reach a consensus in the House that we could go along with perhaps the security part of the sections. It was designed the same way. I hate to bring this up, but it was designed the same way as the LEARNS Act. If I had voted against, voted for the FOIA as it was presented, then I would have been voting against the state police, which I did not want to do. It had four parts. Three of them dealing with the FOIA, major changes to the FOIA law. And there's a group out there that's persistent. It's the same group over and over and again. They're striving to change FOIA. So a lot's happened since we talked with the formation of a group to try to put it in the Constitution, which I wholeheartedly support and agree with. But but the security part was the fourth part, which was the governor's protection, regardless if it's Sarah Huckabee or who it is.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts on that specific piece? Because that's what ended up happening. Okay. You voted for it, correct? You voted for that,
right? Yeah. Yes, I did. That specific portion of the law dealing with the security was needed in some ways to be able to protect the activities of the state police in this day and age of new technology and movement and particularly as it relates to cameras and who's where and who's what, the number of people assigned to a detail to be able to protect her. And everyone wants the governor and her children, or a governor and his wife, to have protection, and that's the state police's responsibility, and they have wholeheartedly fulfilled that. But some of this information that some of the bloggers and others are attempting to secure would lead to them being able to have as much knowledge as the troopers do that perhaps are protecting them. They're in an unknown, uncertain area as it relates to being able to protect. The retroactive part of it, I can understand it. Let me explain how that comes about or why. The retroactive part of it actually starts with the state police the night after the primary or the night of the primaries, when each party, Democratic, Republican, Independent, whatever, selects their candidates. The state police knew then that they would have one with the Democratic Party who had 3 children, and that they would have a candidate with the Republican Party that would have 3 children. So that was 5. That increased from 2 of security detail to put information together. It increased it to 5. So they had to know where those children went to school, what they were doing, what their daily routine might be, what they might have to do to protect them, what number of troopers would they need, where would they need cameras, how would they live in the mansion, and then on the travel, when they traveled, whether it be in-state, intrastate, or interstate, who would care for the children, where would the children be? Most of the time they stay at home in the mansion. Sorry
to interrupt, but so what you're saying is, so from the moment that there's a clear Democratic nominee and a clear Republican nominee here in Arkansas, the state police then is going to assign some sort of security detail and start making plans as to how we can secure the families of whoever the nominees are, Democrat or Republican. And then we get to election, let's say we get to election night, and the winner, in this case, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, one security detail goes away, and now we're focused on, who the current governor is. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. But there's no detail. There's no one involved from the primary to the campaign election to the November general election. That is all planning. The personnel do not become involved until, as you stated, that night, once the election is determined, then one detail goes away. They're there that night at both headquarters, but they do not do anything from this. Well, in the case here was from May through November. They just planned. They just put together the plan of how they would protect them and how they would have executive protection for them. but the actual personnel became involved the night of the election when the selection process had finished out, and it was known that Sarah Sanders would be the governor.
So is this so? Answer the questions on terms of the retroactive part. The way it was, and I know the state police were pushing back against the Blue Hog report, right? Against Matt Campbell. I know they were pushing back. They weren't wanting to release, some of the information. But you're saying as it was before this happened, all that information, all that planning was potentially FOIA-able?
Apparently so. From what the state police has led me to believe, and from what I understand about it, it would have been available, and all that planning and all that they were trying to do to be able to be ready to go on day one, which is their assignment, could have been known. How many are you going? We're going to have 5 troopers the night of the election. We're going to have 6 troopers on a daily basis, rotating. I mean, I don't have any idea how they were going to structure that, but all that information could be known. And the one thing that is important to executive protection is the element of surprise, that you know what you're going to do, but that the person who is the perpetrator or has ill intent toward that person, they're completely distanced. They have no way. But if they know you're going to have 5, they can pinpoint them. Most of the time, they can spot them, who they are, where they are. Of course, I can anytime I'm in a room when a dignitary comes in, I can spot the Secret Service or the state police. But that's just from the natural training. But you have to, the element of surprise best works for the state police, not the other way around. If they know what you're planning to do, and where your cars, where your officers, where your cameras, where you're going to be, I mean, there was a lot of to do about her travel, and we travel here and travel there. Well, I get every day, I get a news release from her office telling me that she's going to be at Greenbrier for a speech at 12 o'clock, and that at 12:15 or 12 o'clock, 11:45, the media must be there. Well, anybody that's going to have any ill motives, they're going to know she's going to be traveling Highway 65 probably sometime during that period between 11:15 and 11:45, or she's going to be landing up there at the Greenbrier Airport. So, I mean, it's kind of but I understand from the standpoint of them wanting to protect retroactively, particularly to the dates that they set in this rule, in this law.
Well, and that's what I wanted to have you on for, State Representative Wooten, because that makes a lot of sense to me, the retroactive part when it comes to a security detail or state police. I don't know, the intelligence state, they love to say sources and methods. We got to protect sources and methods, and a lot of the time they do that. They do that in their. They're just saying that, and it's a bunch of lies. In this scenario, when the way you lay it out, though, it seems to me that nobody needs the state police's sources and methods going back to when the primary was over and a Republican candidate and a Democrat candidate were selected, and now they start to make plans for how they're going to, make sure everybody's safe, make sure they're safe from the the crazies. As Governor Huckabee Sanders says all the time, we live in a crazier and crazier world. That's for sure.
Do.
And and she's been when she was in D.C. I mean, I remember back in the day, I did a segment on it. I think she was at some restaurant in D.C. and was getting accosted up there. I mean, certainly we've never not since I can remember have we had a governor who is so, a national figure, if you will, a very popular national figure, and the left, of course, are increasingly more and more violent, especially the more and more laws, socially conservative laws that are going on the books here in Arkansas. The more the left is going to be, they're going to be more likely to turn violent, quite frankly.
and the state police totally assumes that responsibility, and they recognize that early on when she first announced. I'm sure they became aware, and they know of her notoriety, they know of her popularity, they know of her ability to reach out to the right, but also her ability to agitate the far left, and they're well aware of that, and they have a tremendous responsibility to be able to activate their plans and to be able to, and they're changing every single day. It's a constant motion among Colonel Hager and his staff and commanders and the troopers that are out there with them. They're the ones that are at risk, really. I mean, the family goes first, but then you have the troopers, because they're going to protect them, whatever it takes. They will be protected.
Okay, so all of that aside, real quick, as we're wrapping things up, State Representative Jim Wooten, really appreciate you coming on Conservative Arkansas Media.
Thank you.
What were your thoughts about the tax cuts and the rest of the bills that were on the schedule?
Well, the rest of the bills I felt like were necessary. The tax cut was needs to be put in place as it was. I do have some concerns about the $710 million reserve fund that we have created in addition to the catastrophic fund and the rainy day fund. When we finished up as a state, now we have about $2.3 billion in reserves. The $710 million is held in abeyance and can be requested it be spent by the state chief fiscal officer, Secretary Hudson, in cooperation with the governor's office, and then the ALC, the Arkansas Legislative Council, has to approve that. The only thing that I do share concern about as it relates to the tax cuts and that reserve is we've got to be very, very cautious as it relates to doing completely away with the state income tax. And I know people are tired of taxes, and I'm tired of them having to pay them. And whenever we have billion-dollar surpluses, then we need to return the money to them. But in the tax break, we gave them about $200 million, $250 million, but yet we held on to $710 million in anticipation of, I don't know exactly what, special projects or as funds may be needed, or working toward being able to do away with the state income tax. But we've got to be very cautious, because that $3.2 billion a year that we bring in the individual income taxes, that is the largest amount of state revenue that we have. And I went through this many, many years ago when it related to doing away with sales tax on drugs and groceries and foods, which I agreed with, but I said the same thing then that I'm saying now. Tell me how you're going to replace the money, or tell me how you're going to deal with the services that you're going to diminish or do away with. Give me a plan. We have to have a plan on how we will deal with the loss of that $3.2 billion in funds.
State Representative Jim Wooten, we really appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Paul. Very
Absolutely.
kind. Thank
yes,
you.
sir. This is Conservative Arkansas Media, folks. Thanks so much for watching.